समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
An Indian origin man from Karnataka, Chandra Nagamalaya, has been beheaded in Dallas, and this has been a horrific crime. It was over a washing machine dispute. This man was first kicked and then beheaded as his wife and his teenage son were forced to watch. This crime has taken place even as India and the United States of America try and find a way to move forward amid Trump's tariff war against India. We have seen last night the confirmation hearing of Sergio Gor, Trump's man of choice to represent the United States of America in India, but also as the envoy for South and Central Asia. The Senate hearing, which is necessary in America before an envoy is confirmed, made some very interesting revelations into how the Americans are thinking, how Trump is thinking, and indeed a glimpse into how Trump's man in Delhi might be thinking. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo story. On the program today, what did Sergio Gore, Trump's man in Delhi, or said to be man in Delhi, say at his confirmation hearing about China, about Russia, about India, and of course about the purchase of Russian oil? There were some very interesting and significant comments. While there seemed to be a kind of softening of tone and softening in rhetoric, at least in the emphasis placed on the importance of the Indo-US relationship, Sergio Gore said that Trump's advice is quote-unquote crystal clear. India must stop the purchase of Russian oil. India has made it clear that that is not going to happen. In fact, India's envoy to Moscow said India will buy oil wherever it gets the best deal. While trade talks between both countries have resumed, several issues remain sort of frozen at an impasse point, and it's not clear where we're going to go from here. This at a time when Sergio Gore interestingly spoke about, if we can just go back to the previous pictures and then I'll come to this news. Interestingly, as Sergio Gore spoke about pulling India away from China into the American camp. So that's already an expectation that Trump's man in Delhi is setting for himself or as a goal for himself. Meanwhile, as I said, there has been horrific news coming out of Dallas in the United States of America today. We have seen Chandra Nagamalaya, originally from Karnataka, who is a motel manager in Dallas, kicked and then beheaded, all of it caught on CCTV, killed by a man reported to be an illegal migrant in the United States of America over a washing machine dispute, over a broken washing machine dispute. This development coming hours after the assassination of Trump ally Charlie Kirk, which took place at a university campus even as Kirk was answering questions about mass gun violence, mass gun shootings. Of course, Chandra Nagamalaya's assassination, killing, not making it to the headlines in American mainstream media. A lot to talk about as we look at Sergio Gore's testimony and how India and United States of America may or may not move forward. I want to introduce our guests on the program today as we look at what we have learned about how the Americans are thinking today in that confirmation hearing. Veteran diplomat Ambassador Dilip Sinha is with us. It's always a pleasure to have you, sir. And one of India's finest strategic minds, Professor Mohan, is with us as well. Thank you, Raja. Always a pleasure to have you. I want to start with, I thought, a very telling comment. At one point, Sergio Gor, he has to be confirmed, but we have to assume that that's a formality. We have to assume that this is the man who's going to represent the Trump administration shortly in Delhi. After a gap of many months, India is going to have an American ambassador here in the national capital. And Gore at one point talks about pulling India away from China towards the United States of America. So that expectation of India leaning towards the United States has been very clearly spelt out. Take a look at this statement.
Our relationship with the Indian government, with the people of India, extends many more decades, and it's a much warmer relationship than they have with the Chinese. Frankly, they are concerned by Chinese expansionism. And Chinese expansionism is not just on the border of India, it's all over the area. And so we share a lot in common, and we share a lot of the same concerns that other nations in the region do. So should I be confirmed, we will make that a top priority, that India is pulled into our side and away from them.
India is pulled. We will make it a top priority that India is pulled away to our side, away from them, the them being China. Let's get comments on this. Ambassador Dilip Sinha, I think, had Gore said this maybe a few months back. Firstly, he wouldn't have needed to say this a few months back because there was a sense of a very clear leaning towards the United States of America. But I think there's some recalibration on whether that leaning towards the US makes sense anymore. The Americans setting that expectation very clear. Those images out of the SEO summit in China with Modi, Putin and Xi Jinping's power huddle clearly sending a message of its own to the Americans, and the Americans saying, this doesn't work. We've got to pull them back to our side. How did you see that very explicit comment, Dilip Sinha, Ambassador Dilip Sinha?
Well, one of the comments that he made along with these comments was that Trump is very direct, very blunt. He is, you know where you stand with him. This was his view. And of course, he added that when it comes to European leaders, they say something behind their back and something in public. So with Trump, you don't have that. That, of course, was his comment. But we have to be prepared for lots of pulls and pressures. The pull will be, as he himself said, to pull India out of what he thinks is going to lead India's tilt towards China. And the pressures, it was quite clear from the questioning of the senators as well as from his reply that India buying Russian oil is a no-no with America. And America will put pressure upon us regardless of the legality of the issue, regardless of the double standards that they are applying on us. The fact is that the US sees we buying oil from Russia as something that they cannot tolerate, and they will stop that. So we have to get ready for these pulls and pressures when this person comes to India. He comes with he's very close to Trump. His career is he's a trusted person of Trump. So when he comes, he will speak on behalf of Trump, and he will put all those pressures upon us.
And in a way, are those pressures going to work? Before I come to Professor Rajamohan, you know, the pressures at this time would need a serious rebuilding of something. You know, at this moment, I don't think India would be ready to give in to this pressure to stop the purchase of Russian oil. Ambassador Sinha?
Yes, because this has become so public. And the other problem is that if it was some other administration, perhaps we could have gone and quietly talked to them and say, okay, we are going to stop or reduce our purchase of oil over the next 2 or 3 years. So let's build a relationship on that basis. But the moment anybody privately says anything like this to an American, it will be tweeted the next day by Trump in his social tweet. So that will be the death knell of that proposal. So it does not give any scope for any backroom or what you used to call the track 2 or track 2.5 dialogue taking place, where you quietly come across, do a deal, and then not make it public. But this is not a situation that we are faced with. And having taken a public position, our government will have a tough time going back on that, and we seem to be coming under pressure from the US.
Professor Rajamohan, how do you see it? You know, India's envoy to Moscow is on record saying India will purchase oil wherever it gets the best deal. The fact is that in the past, we have acceded to American concerns, for example, on the purchase of oil from Iran or Venezuela. I don't think the Modi government will be in the mood for that. And as Ambassador Dilip Sinha said, it has been played out in public. So even if you were to start reducing sort of your purchase of oil from Russia, it would immediately be reported, it would immediately be commented on. And there is a political cost to this. We've seen it in Japan, where, you've actually had somebody losing power over being, over this tariff war. So how do you see the Gore testimony? And the new envoy, I'm assuming for the moment that there's no hassle with his confirmation, the new envoy of the United States of America very clearly saying his mandate is clear. India has to stop purchasing oil from Russia.
Barkha, you raised 2 points, one vis-a-vis Russia and the other vis-a-vis China. I think on Russia, I agree with Ambassador Sinha that, look, public pressure makes it very hard for India to be seen as acting under American pressure. But I think there is some room here for the government of India, I think. The government of India has not said the purchase of Russian oil was a political policy. They've said the Indian companies, it's a commercial decision. They would buy it where it is the cheapest. So in some ways, right from the beginning, I think Delhi has distanced itself from the purchase of spot market oil by the Indian companies, both the public ones and the private ones. So I think there is a wiggle room here, and I think the Delhi can, if it wants to, politically decide that, look, the Russia issue, I think it's quite clear. I think it's a tragedy that we become the collateral damage between US and Russia on the Ukraine issue. Because Trump came in with the instincts that he wants to improve relations with Russia. But the attempt to construct a peace deal on Ukraine has not moved forward very, very well. Therefore, he's using India to put pressure on Russia. Now, I don't think this is a good place for India to be in. Whatever might have been the decision in 2022 to acquire oil because it was going so cheap in Russia. So I think India will have to make a call. Are you going to simply willing to get caught between US and Russia at this point of time, where the intensity of the conflict is growing, and if they manage to get the G7 and the Europeans, it's going to get worse. So I think at some point, India will have to make the call. And as I said, if it is a commercial decision and not a political decision, there might be some room to play with. And I would say watch this space in the next few days and look at the actual purchases rather than taking a prejudgment. India will never do this.
Just hold on. On that issue, basically what you're saying, which is different from Ambassador Sinha's point and my own interpretation, you're saying the government hasn't locked itself into a never will we stop buying oil from Russia. There is wiggle room. The point I am making is the decision on oil may not have been political, but because of the way Trump punished India for this purchase, right? Sorry, there's some audio. I think somebody's playing something. One second, guys, could you not play the Trump clip in the background, please? Because I can't hear myself think. There's some problem. 1 second, just give me a second. Let me just... Can you hear me, Raja? Sorry, I had to remove my producers from the back end. Yeah, I was saying that on that note, I want to ask you something. It wasn't political to start with, but the moment Trump actually says we're punishing you for this, for a country to then not do it becomes a political call. And you seem to be saying we don't have to be locked into that position. Can we unmute Professor Mohan, please? I can't hear you, Raja. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I think
now I can. Now I can. Yeah.
I think. Look, there is a problem here. That one, we are political level, we are caught between US and Russia at this point on their diplomacy over Ukraine. Now, we have to make a judgment. Look, how much of the costs of being caught in a collateral damage are you willing to pay? And is there a way out of this crisis? And what are the complications that it might create domestically? Those issues exist. But the fact is the government of India never said, including our ambassador to Russia, he never said, look, it's a political policy to buy oil from Russia. No Indian spokesman has said this. They're saying, look, wherever it is available, we'll buy because India imports so much oil. Oil is so critical for India's energy security. Therefore, we'll make a judgment on the basis of commercial interests and availability of oil. So all I'm saying is, look, it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It doesn't mean it is a complete situation where you have no option. But I think it will be a political call in the end of how we're going to handle this. My own sense is the fact that in the last week we have resumed contact, that we have decided to engage them, recognize as, look, there is a political case for ending this crisis with the United States. How we do that, we'll see how this plays out. But I think the fact that last few days, it also means both sides have said they need to find a way out. And within this, India will have to do some things. US will have to do some things. I think I would say watch this space rather than come to a very, very definitive conclusion at this point on the Russian oil. Second, I think on the China issue, I think interesting that the photo op in Tianjin seemed to have worked.
That's right. I agree with that.
Yeah, in a way, you see, look, for 25 years, unstated or stated assumption on which India-US relations have grown is the idea that both of us share concerns about China's challenge to Asia. Therefore, we need to work together for producing a balance of power system in Asia. I think that was the principal basis on which the relationship has been built. Now, I think in the last few weeks, Trump seemed to suggest, look, he doesn't give a damn.
Yeah.
My sense is, what we heard from Gore is that, look, he does care, he does give a damn. He is interested in the India relationship because of the question of China and that Asian balance of power. They will need India. And I think, so we're going back to where we were, I think, at the level of framing that India is important for the US in terms of balance of power in Asia and the Indo-Pacific. So he's saying that we're going to pursue that policy. We haven't heard this in the last 6 months. In the last 6 months.
Fair. So you do think there's an improvement in tone. You think that the limited
On the
tactical
framing,
move in the framing, and you think that that those images out of the SCO summit seem to have served their purpose. But it's unclear, Master Sinha, how you're going to walk this tightrope because they're very clear. Come to our side. Come to our side. Is that sort of a rhetorical expectation, or would it be a real one? Because Gore was polite. Navarro and others have said, you've got to pick a side. You can't be in BRICS, you can't be in SCO, you can't be leaning towards China. These are vampire countries and so on. Gore has said it in a more civilized sort of template that, look, they're also concerned about Chinese expansionism. They'll want to be with us. We'll pull them back to us.
Yes. Yes, you see, I think Trump went after India and not after China and Russia because he knew that those two countries had leverages both on him and on his country. And he thought that India didn't have leverage. But Prime Minister Modi, by going across to Tianjin, showed that we do have some leverage, and that leverage has actually worked. So to that extent is absolutely correct. And on the Russian oil thing, I entirely agree with Professor Raja Mohan that if we can somehow get out of this trap. You see, the Russian oil thing is not just a question of legality. It has now become a question of perception, not merely in the way the Gore or some other people perceive in the US, but even in European public opinion, it is coming up because the way it's been highlighted. We will have to do something to get out of this because our relations, not only with Trump, but also with Europe, are important. And the way Putin is behaving and bombing in Ukraine, we will have to somehow, as happened in the case of Israel versus Doha, that Doha attack, we changed our position. We expressed concern and we were far tougher this time in our comment than earlier. So similarly, I think on Ukraine also, we'll probably have to start changing our tune because it's getting too far. On the question of improving relations now, but Trump clearly, as appeared from the senators also, two things are important: export of oil or petroleum products and agricultural products. So we have to focus on these two. Our trade negotiators have to go and start buying something of this from them because all these senators were spokesmen for these two industries, as is Trump himself. So that is a way out, that we start buying more. And then the price factor can be, of course, that can be talked about. And that is one way of getting out of this trap. Otherwise, this extremely important political relationship cannot be thrown away.
So here's Trump moments ago on Fox and Friends. This is happening now. early morning television in the US. I put a 50% tariff on India because they're buying oil from Russia. It's not an easy thing to do. That's a big deal and it causes a rift with India. So this is going to go on and on and on. And we're going to have to learn to not get riled up, not get provoked by it, because this is now replaced I ended the war between India and Pakistan as his sort of leitmotif. He keeps saying it every day. I want to just play out one more clip from Sergio Gore's confirmation hearing. He was asked, very interestingly, he was asked, China buys more oil. China buys more oil from Russia than India does. And why is India being punished and not China? Take a look at what his very unconvincing response was.
Look, we hold our friends to a different standard. Frankly, we expect more from India than we do sometimes from other nations. I do think it will get resolved over the next few weeks.
So, I mean, that's all he said. Why aren't you punishing China? We hold India to a different standard. We expect more from India. We think it'll get resolved in a few weeks. Then Trump comes and says, you know, hours later, as we're speaking, he says this on Fox and Friends. Now, I want your reaction to this. There is no logical answer. Professor Rajamohan, I'll start with you. There's no logical answer to... The logical answer is actually China has choke points that India hasn't yet developed. He's not daring to do this with China. He's daring to do this with us, which will again build up public opinion, which is why I'm calling it a political decision. It'll build up that public pressure. You know, if the Modi government moves towards reducing the purchase of Russian oil while China goes unscathed for buying more oil, there will be a political narrative, I'm sure, from the opposition, critics of the government, even maybe supporters of the government saying, hey, you caved to the Americans. How did you see this answer from Gore?
Look, I think, Ambassador Sinha worked in the government for many years. And when are the governments consistent on a position or logical? See, President Trump has taken certain positions. This man, Sergio Gore, has to defend it in some form or the other. See, look, it's quite brazen use of pressure tactics on India. I mean, I think there's no escaping from it. So, sure. You can go on and on about discrimination, unfairness, but the world is like that. Now, the question for us is the political question. Look, unfortunately or fortunately, willingly or unwittingly, we got caught in the the West versus Russia fight on Ukraine.
And you really believe it's that? You don't think it's about his ego being miffed about over ops and
no, see, all those are there, but principally, the case on which it is being made is that, look, our position on Ukraine and our engagement with Russia, which is at war with the West, and that war is being escalated by both sides. You are caught in that. Now, question is, if your historic policy of non-alignment, you don't want to get caught in other people's wars, but we are caught now. I think that is a bigger question than are we acting under pressure those are difficult calls for the government to make, but I think you're caught, you're paying a price. And in fact, the government has said, look, Biden administration has said, buying Russian oil helps to stabilize the global market. But then if you give that argument to these guys, they say, look, we don't give a damn for Biden administration. In fact, everything Biden did for them is wrong. So I think all this unfairness, discrimination, all those are facts. But for us, the question is, given your trade relations with US and Europe, which are actually much bigger than the trade relationship with China and Russia, how do you deal with this new situation? That is the issue. As I said, look, our exports to Russia are just $5 billion. Our exports to China are $15 billion. You have a $90 billion export surplus with trade with the Americans. So the idea that, look, when we talk about multipolarity, China and Russia are not alternatives for you when it comes to your exports. So I think the question then becomes, how do we navigate out of this? What are the mechanisms we can use? That is the issue. And I think here there'll be some complex diplomacy, some fine trapeze walking by our diplomats. So I think I would say watch through.
Yeah. So POTUS Trump is continuing on Fox and Friends, and I'm just reading out some of these updates that we're getting in real time. We have been successful because of the tariffs, Ambassador Sinha, he says. It's given us a great power to negotiate with countries that took advantage of us. We have a big case. It's now at the Supreme Court. The case is really important to win because it's made us a rich country. Okay. I want to bring you in, Ambassador Sinha. Trump has clearly weaponized the tariffs. He has to pass the US Supreme Court on it. There are a number of Trump critics in his own country, Jeffrey Sachs and others, who say this is unconstitutional, illegal. Let's see if the Supreme Court passes it or doesn't pass it. So that's one big question mark. The other thing that's happening is that Trump is failing so far. He's failing to get a deal on Russia-Ukraine. Had he got a deal on Russia-Ukraine, there would have been a context for him to lift this 25% penalty on India for purchasing Russian oil. Now, India can't wait for this extraneous development to carve our own path ahead out of this, whatever wiggle room Raja is referencing can still exist, and that governments are not held to consistency. Governments have to change as things change. Do you believe, let me ask you directly, do you believe that in the interests of the larger relationship, India should cut back its purchase of Russian oil at this point, or would you wait longer to do that? If we did it at all?
No, if I were in position, I would definitely start cutting back. And I would not cut back.
Why?
The argument I would use with both Russia and China is that, look, the old global trading system is dead. Now we are all talking bilaterally, and we have to balance our trade bilaterally. If China wants us to buy $122 billion worth of goods, it better buy more from us. If Russia wants us to buy Russian oil, Russia better buy more goods from us. We are not going to use American dollars to buy Russian oil or Chinese goods. Those days are gone. These countries have to start balancing. Now you talk about we having to swallow our pride with Trump. Yes, we'll have to swallow our pride with Trump, but we just swallowed our pride with Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping, we did not raise any of the concerns that we have with China in our bilateral talks, whether Wang Yi with EM or with our NSA talking with the NSA there, or Prime Minister talking with Xi Jinping. We did not raise a trade deficit. We did not raise, in fact, they said that we had said that Taiwan is a part of China, which we very quietly kind of wriggled out of. So we did not do anything to annoy China. That itself was, despite having had 5 years ago a major fight with them when they misused and they violated our bilateral laws to kill our soldiers. So we gave no explanation as to why we went back on that. What was the logic? Was SCO? I mean, SCO is a useless organization to go for an SCO meeting when Prime Minister Xi Jinping did not come to India for that meeting here. So, here we have to accept that we will have to take steps. Just simply ignore what we had said yesterday or done yesterday, and look at our national interest and go ahead.
And in a way, what you're saying is that if we can find a way to talk to China again, given troops eyeball to eyeball, given we haven't gone back to status quo ante pre-Galwan, then why not swallow our pride with Trump? I want to pull up a comment here from one of our regular viewers, Prasad Duvuri. Barkha, in the same confirmation hearings, the conversation between Senator Cruz, that's Ted Cruz, and Sergio Gore, he makes it clear that he wants India to switch from Russian oil to US oil, NG and petrochemicals. That might be it. Now, Professor Rajamohan, what's very important to remember, and which is why I slightly have always said it's not about Russian oil, and I find Russian oil a bogey. Petroleum products are exempt from this 50% tariffs. They're actually not even on the the list of products that are tariffed, right? The Americans themselves buy refined petroleum products from India, not to the extent that the Europeans do, which is about $15 billion worth of it, and that's the point. Now, I know that the FT reported that Trump wanted the EU to slap 100% tariff on India. Doesn't look like that's happening. In the same breath or the same timeline as he's saying, oh, Modi's my great friend, Modi's my great friend. So, when both of you say adapt to changing tones, and if we can with China, why not with the US, where the adversarial element has never been as serious as it has with China. The point is, we literally don't know who to believe in the Trump administration. We don't even know if we can believe Trump.
Proof of the pudding eventually would be whether the 25% tariff will be removed or not. Because, as I said, look, you take a commercial decision to reduce purchases, you can increase it again. So I think, look, as long as you frame it as a commercial issue, then I think we can go along with this, how we negotiate. But I think, look, I don't think we should frame it in emotional terms. of swallowing pride, of honor. Because after all, 3 months ago, you had our senior military officials saying China and Pakistan were one team.
Correct.
What happened in Op Sindoor? Forget what happened in Galwan. That China was the principal supporter for. So I think look, the world is a Maya Nagar, to frame it in simpleton terms, that we have clarity of this kind of moral clarity. It's a complex world. The same Russia and US oil companies are trying to get into Russia. They want to extract oil from Arctic. They want to Exxon wants to get back into some of its fields. So it is absolutely unfair world out there. So I think for us is, if we say, look, here we are, whatever the reasons we went to buy cheap Russian oil, what do we do now? What is India's interest? What are the interests of Indian people? How do we see? It's all right to say you swallow your pride. You tell that to the people in Tirupur who are losing their apparel exports. You're going to tell them to the fishermen of Andhra Pradesh, and you tell that to the Gujarat diamond merchants. So I think that's why the government's test is what are our long-term interests on the economic side? How do we manage them? So therefore, by publicly, I know social media is going to go crazy. They say you sold out. An opposition will say that.
Yeah.
But I think, look, in the end, this is about, you have a serious situation where a large part of the trade is affected. And how do we regain that? And also, how do we restore balance in our relationship with the US, Russia, and China? And I think what we try to do in Tianjin, we need peaceful coexistence with China. We've done that. That doesn't solve any of your problems with China. What you did in Tianjin, your border situation, your trade deficit, your Pakistan problem with China. So I think, therefore, you need, if you don't have relationship at all with one country where you're facing trade sanctions, your ability to deal with the other two is going to get harder. When the Chinese and Russians are going to exploit it, if you have a permanent conflict with the Americans, that's the brutality of the realpolitik. So the question is,
No. I was going to say, I hear you, and I agree with you that it's easy to do this sort of armchair, cavalier, calls to action for walking the solitary path. India can do this on its own. No, India cannot do this on its own. But I think the question then is, what is multipolarity? If we're going to lean into the American expectation of reduced Russian oil, of reduced engagement with the Chinese, then it's not multipolarities necessarily, Ambassador Sinha. Sorry, can we unmute Ambassador Sinha?
Sorry,
Yeah.
am I unmuted? Yeah.
Go ahead.
We ourselves are a pole, and we have to start recognizing that we are a major power. And as a major power, we have our national interests, and we will conduct relations with countries based on our national interest. Now, everybody applies double standards. China had recently banned the export of rare earths to India. Now, India had done nothing to annoy China. It was America that was doing so, and yet China imposed that restriction upon us as well. So these are actions that countries take for whatever reasons. So do we take our actions? So we buy oil not only for wherever it's the cheapest, but also wherever it suits us politically. And similarly, in our relations, we have to have basic, even relations with China. That's important for our economic growth. Russia has been an old trusted friend. We should continue to have relations with Russia, but I think we should start telling both these countries that they have to balance the trade with us. That we cannot continue a trade on a one-sided basis where we buy and they don't buy anything from us. And that itself will enable us to wriggle out of some of the situations that we are in right now. And in the case of America, it justifies our purchase of oil from them because our at least trade in goods is lopsided.
Okay, before I come back for last comments, I just want to play out that clip of Donald Trump on Fox and Friends. We have it with us now. Let's take a look. This is his latest claim on what imposing tariffs, including on India, has achieved, he claims, for the United States of America. Take a look.
What is clamping down on Vladimir Putin?
Well, it'll be hitting very hard with sanctions to banks and having to do with oil and tariffs also. But I've already done it. I've done a lot. Look, India was their biggest customer. I put a 50% tariff on India because they're buying oil from Russia. That's not an easy thing to do. That's a big deal. And it causes a rift with India.
And so, he recognizes that it causes a rift, but he's now started framing this rift completely within the framework of this purchase of Russian oil. right? I want to just come back with questions on Gore. We haven't discussed in the whole program that he's also the envoy for South and Central Asia, how that dimension may play out. We've spoken a lot about Realpolitik, how we have to adapt to, how diplomacy is a game of chess in that way, and point taken. But this business of Gore being an envoy for South and Central Asia, Professor Raja Mohan, does that concern you? Alongside being an envoy for India. Yeah.
I think the Pakistanis and Bangladeshis will be even more concerned. We always think purely from our perspective. Think of if you're sitting in Islamabad and you think the ambassador to India is also the ambassador to South Asia. What would Pakistan think? In fact, one of the things he said in his testimony, no, I'm trying to undermine the other ambassadors, but I'm here. See, look, whatever the reason to give him that designation, look, the India relationship is much bigger than the relationship the US has with all the other neighbors put together, including Pakistan, if you take the economic side. Whatever the little improvement that has taken place between them is there. That's a reality. Our problem on Pakistan is not the US. I mean, it is China which supplies them today most of the arms. During the war, that's what we found out. Therefore, I think whatever he's called, I think this is where I go back to what Ambassador said. Look, if you're the third largest economy or fifth largest economy, third largest armed force, fifth largest spending on military capabilities, I mean, why are we so jumpy at every little thing? I mean, I would say we take it as it comes. What can he do? He'll come and say, okay, now let's sit and talk on Kashmir. I mean, in fact, President Trump has not talked about Kashmir. So I think we should not be, we've dealt with this, Barkha, as we discussed earlier. For the last 30 years, Ambassador Sinha was the Joint Secretary of Pakistan. We fended off American, European, all kinds of attempts to mediate on Kashmir. We are today a much bigger country, more powerful country. Therefore, this constant fear, someone is going to here and there. I mean, we're not a little babe in the wood that people will just hustle us around. So I think it's a problem we have to deal with. And as I said, Pakistan has a bigger problem with that. Bangladesh will have a bigger problem saying the ambassador to India is also the ambassador to the rest of the countries. Yeah. So they have a problem as well.
Last word to you, Ambassador Sinha. The Quad showed glimmers of resurrection in that Senate confirmation hearing, which was interesting. It seemed to be all but dead 2 weeks ago, and I think that's Professor Raja Mohan's point, that a week is long in domestic politics. It's even longer in geopolitics, especially in the age of Trump. But Gore's representing of a larger space than just India. This has been interpreted in two ways. One is the way that Raja does, that look, it should bother the Pakistanis and the Bangladeshis much more. Delhi is clearly recognized to be the seat of power, the seat of relevance. But there's another interpretation that with this obsession that Trump has about his imagined or exaggerated sense of, his role in Op Sindoor, is that hyphenation back, or is that hyphenation only as real as we allow it to be?
But if you heard Gore, he seemed to underplay that aspect. He said that, look, I'm not going to undermine the authority of the other ambassadors. If they need me, I'll be there. So clearly, he has not been told to come here and resolve the Kashmir issue. Mm-hmm. His mandate, as came out from the questions by the senators and from his own statements, was that he's coming here to put pressure upon us to stop buying Russian oil, to come out of China's camp, and then buy oil and agricultural products from America. That is his mandate. That comes out very clearly in the questions. And the fact that the senators talked about Quad and emphasize the importance of Quad shows that in American political circles, the fact that India went to Tianjin has sunk into them that something is going wrong here, and that Trump has overplayed his sanctions bit, and that needs to be reversed. That came out very clearly in the questions that the senators asked. So that would have sunk home in Gore's mind, that he has to get that right, and he said that I have to pull India out of that. Now, of course, the language is very crude, but the fact is that is exactly what he's being sent here for. So I don't think we should worry about whether he goes to Dhaka and Nepal or wherever else he has to go to. His primary task will be to restore India-US relations to a point where Trump can say, look, I succeeded in this.
I will say this in the end, that those images at the SCO summit is the only form in which Western media across the board reported the story. Till then it was on the margins of, we were obsessed with it because we were slapped with 50% tariff, but it was not even making a blip. And suddenly this huddle between Putin, Modi and Xi Jinping, it was everywhere. And all these senators referencing it may not have known about it had Prime Minister not gone. So I think as far as tactics go, truly smart move there. A little bit of a power flex there. And now I think, as has been pointed out by both of you, you've got to keep showing that dexterity on the global chessboard. You have a point to make, Ambassador Sinha? Go ahead.
Yeah, just one point. It shows that a photo is far more important than a long article.
Oh, well, I'll put it differently. I'll say the photo can get somebody to pay attention to the long article. So let's not in an age of shrinking attention spans take away from the value of the long article. Please keep writing them. Raja, you trying to add a comment there? Raja?
Yeah, it also shows that, look, we can make moves. I think the whole Tianjin thing was, I think it's a masterclass in great power diplomacy by India. I think that should be acknowledged. I mean, that with a limited room, when you're under deep pressure, we made a move, and that's having some effect. And then now is really from there, where do we go? So I think we often don't give enough credit, but it's a clever move, it's a smart move. It played so far.
Absolutely. Now comes the tough part. You've got to balance. You've got to balance it as you walk ahead. But yeah, you're back in play. And I think that's what's important. We leave it there. Thank you so much, Ambassador Dilip Sinha, Professor Raja Mohan. Always a pleasure. Always a masterclass in learning from both of you. Thank you. Take care and see you soon.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.